Hi everyone, I am Ellie Tahmasebi. I am going to walk you through about GraphQL. So how many people over here are using GraphQL in their daily job? 1, 2, 3, quite a few. Cool. So I'm going to walk you through about these subjects.
You've played with this confidential, but this is like a public.
Sorry?
You've played with them confidential.
No, this is from NatWest, so I use NatWest. So agenda is what is GraphQL, the core concept of GraphQL, key features of GraphQL, comparison GraphQL with REST APIs, why GraphQL is gaining popularity, key advantages of GraphQL for developers, and how we use GraphQL in my team. Some resources, and if you have any questions. So what is GraphQL? GraphQL is a query language for APIs and a server runtime for executing those queries. GraphQL allows clients to request data from server in a highly flexible way. Also, with GraphQL, the client can define the shape and content of the data it wants. They can request exactly what they need, no more and no less. With GraphQL, a single query can retrieve related data in one go. I do have an example over here to show you what I mean. So as a scenario, a client wants to retrieve details about a user, but only they need their name and email. And also they want a list of the user's blog post, but only the title of each post. What they can write in the GraphQL, they can create a query like the image. And this query is for the specific user, which has an ID of 1. And then they can write down the field name they want, which is name and email. And over here we have nested query, which I'm going to cover it in a further slide. And then the data they can get, which look like this. So it looks like the user, the name of the user, email address, post, and for each post they can just get the title of that. The client only requested the specific fields, name, email, and the title, and the server returned exactly what the data they need, no extra or unnecessary information. And with single request, they got what they wanted, but if it was a REST API, they would require two separate calls, one to get the user details and one to get the posts. Now I'm going to cover a little bit about the core concepts of GraphQL. GraphQL's core concept, which is a schema, queries, mutations, enable powerful client and service interactions, offering flexibility and control over data retrieval and manipulation. So about the schema, a schema defines the structure of the API, including types, queries, and mutation. It acts as the contract between the client and the server. A schema specifies what types of data can be queried or modified, and it's a relation between different data types. It acts as the contract between the client and the server. So I have an example over here, which is a type, and it's my schema for some of the queries, and it just has the ID and name and age. About queries, queries in GraphQL are used to fetch data from the server, and clients can specify exactly which fields they need and they want. So over here we have a query, and this query requests the name and the age of the user with the specific ID, because it's for the specific user and the ID of the user is 1. And we just get the data we want without overfetching unnecessary data. We have mutations in GraphQL. Mutations are used to modify data on the server, such as creating, updating, or deleting resources. Mutations can also specify what data to return after the change. So over here I have an example for a mutation, and I want to run that mutation to be able to update my data. Some of the key features of GraphQL I'm going to cover. So declarative data fetching. With GraphQL, you specify the exact data you want in your query in a single request, as I mentioned. So over here, this query is fetching a user's name, email, their posts, and comments on those posts. in a single request. The data will look like this, so you can just get what you ask for. So the username, the user email, and post title, and the comments on that specific post. With this single request, no need to make multiple API calls to get users' info, posts, and comments. GraphQL allows you to fetch all related data in one go. Also with GraphQL, you have single endpoint. GraphQL uses a single endpoint like /GraphQL for all data requests, no matter the type of the data. For example, you can request both users and posts in one query. So you can, over here, you can query users and posts, and the name and email and the title for post. And the data you are going to get for a single, for a single endpoint look like this. This is different from the REST APIs, where you have multiple endpoints. If you had a REST API, you would need to have /users, /posts for getting each of these data. But with GraphQL, with one single endpoint, you can get different types of data. In GraphQL, we have feature name nested structure. In GraphQL, the structure of the query mirrors the structure of the data, the structure of the response. So scenario, imagine you want to get information about an author and their books. With GraphQL, you can ask for both in a single query. So over here, I am writing down a query for the author, and I want the books of that author, and I just want the title and published year of each book. And this is how I'm going to write down a query for that. And the books are the nested structure over here. And the response follows the same pattern, because the way that I wrote down my query is actually mirroring the structure of the response. And I get an author, name, books, and just the title and published year for each book. Now the comparison between GraphQL and REST APIs. I'm just going to quickly read all of this, and we'll show you some example for each. We have data fetching. So for data fetching with GraphQL, one request for all needed data, but with the REST API, you need to have multiple requests to get to different endpoints. Flexibility. With GraphQL, flexible queries are happening on the client based on the client needs. But with the REST API, you need fixed endpoints, and sometimes for new features, you need to add new endpoint. And we do have API versioning. For GraphQL, you don't need, no versioning is needed. Clients adapt to the schema changes. It's really flexible. But with the REST API, you need versioning for new features. And the handling related data, with GraphQL, fetch related data, you can fetch related data in one single request. But with REST API, you need to separate requests needed for related data. And overfetching and underfetching, with GraphQL, you just get what data you need. But with REST APIs, you might get too much or too little data in your requests. And I have some examples over here with GraphQL. For data fetching, I have a query, and I just get the name and post and the title of those posts. But if I wanted to fetch the same data, I needed to have, in the REST APIs, I needed to have /user1. And if I wanted the post, I needed to have /users with the ID 1 and post. Flexibility, again, over here, if I want just the title of the post, I can just write down a query like this. But with the REST API, you need to add a new endpoint for titles to get after the /posts. API versioning, no versioning in the GraphQL, as I mentioned, is needed. But with the REST APIs, for new features, you need to have different and endpoints, for different endpoints. Overfetching and underfetching. Over here, if I want just the name and email of a user, I can just write down a query for that. But with the REST APIs, I'm going to get age and address, for example, over here, which I really didn't need that. And why GraphQL is gaining popularity? One of the reasons is efficiency. You just request only what you need. Clients can ask for just the specific data they want, and single request for related data. You can get all related information in one go instead of making multiple requests. Flexibility. Developers can create queries that fit their needs, allowing them for quick adjustment without extra work. And the app needs, and it adapts easily. If the app needs change, GraphQL can quickly adapt without needing to rewrite your API. User-friendly, many developers find GraphQL straightforward and simple to use, and GraphQL works well for all complex apps. GraphQL handles complicated relations between data. For example, the query I showed you, like users and their post, and you can just write down one query for getting the data. GraphQL is becoming popular because it saves time, it's easy to use, and has a strong support community, and also works well for modern applications. The key advantage of GraphQL for developers, it's fast, so developers need just to make fewer API changes over time, which can speed them up and can speed front end and back end as well. Improved UX, your clients can optimize their data requests to get exactly what they need, improving application performance. And less complexity. A single endpoint for all requests means less overhead and simpler client-side code. Now I'm going to walk you through how we are using GraphQL in my team. So in my team, we use GraphQL Code Gen to auto-generate types for our queries and mutations in our code base. In our front end, we use Apollo GraphQL client. And for development, we rely on the Apollo GraphQL browser extension, and it's really useful, and also Playground, GraphQL Playground. Also, the GraphQL backend is hosted on a single AWS Lambda function, and we cache queries to boost performance and clear the cache when the data is deleted with GraphQL. Some of the resources I'm going to share here is if anyone wants to learn more about GraphQL, there's a website named How to GraphQL. It's really useful. Some YouTube channels, Fireship and NetJinja, and documentation of GraphQL you can find. And thank you. This is me. If you want to connect with me in LinkedIn. And any questions?